taking a 360-degree look at the key leaders shaping business in Tampa Bay, the catalyst for the region's explosive growth, driving the economy, and defining the community, sharing their experiences, perspectives, and vision for the future. You are watching CEO 360.
Hi everyone, I'm Serena Fazan and welcome to the launch of our new show, CEO 360. Our first episode, what could be better? A place that fills your heart and soul, Feeding Tampa Bay. It is my honor and privilege to introduce the CEO of Feeding Tampa Bay, Thomas Mass. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having us here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you.
So Thomas, let's set the stage. Where are we at Feeding Tampa Bay right now? There's so much activity around us.
A lot of activity. You're in the middle of our volunteer area, and these folks have drawn the lucky assignment of rebagging potatoes. So when we get a farmer that gives us potatoes, good, fresh, healthy potatoes, we've got to bag them into smaller segments so that our neighbors that get food from us can take home the right amount for their family. So these folks are all with us for the afternoon. They'll be bagging potatoes today, they'll be bagging potatoes tomorrow, and probably the day after that.
Well,
that is a lot of potatoes.
That's a lot of potatoes, I've got to say. So this whole world, let's talk about you though. This whole world came to you. It was a calling. You were in the private sector for 20 years.
Sure.
What happened?
So
it's great. It's great. We're
Yeah.
saying it's fantastic. What happened though?
I think, everybody has their story, right? Their personal story. I was fortunate in that I grew up in the corporate world, which was good to me. I found, I think, skills and abilities that I had that I could use there. I worked locally here in Florida and New York City for many years overseas. And so I enjoyed a lot of that, but ultimately it wasn't resonant for me. It wasn't something that I really felt as excited about it maybe as others did. And I always had a sense that there was something different for me that I wanted to do. I don't know that I knew what it was, but you just kind of have this nagging sense that although you're having success, it's not necessarily maybe the best use of what you want to do.
But your calling too came on a subway trip, right?
Well, there's a couple of different parts of the story that I think I would share. I think, the first part of the story is, as you're going through this and you're starting to think about who am I and what do I want to do and where am I going, I was in my late 30s, close to 40 years old, and so I was starting to think about what that might look like. And one day I'm on the subway, early in the morning. I'm an early riser, getting to work early, and there's a gentleman that comes up and asks me for some food, money, right? And so the guy asked me for money, and this is a con often, as people would observe, but I talked to him for a few minutes, and it's probably about 4:30 in the morning. And he says, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to work." He looks at me, he says, "You got it bad." And
No way!
And he walks off. Right, here's this guy, right? I don't know if I'm Adam's house guy, and he walks off. But, when you're in that place in your life, and so I started thinking a lot about that. What was the balance of things that I cared about and what did I want to do? Every day when I walked to the subway, I walked by where there was a monument to Martin Luther King, and they had a saying there that when I would read it, sometimes it would convict me, sometimes it would motivate me, sometimes it would scare me, but it was something that really talked about what you want to do in this world and what you want to add. And then the final part of the story, and so I would think about that.
And this was a subway in New York, right?
Yep.
A subway in New York.
Yep.
And who would have ever thought
Right,
some guy, right? This is a lesson, guys, right? That you never know who could
Right,
walk
you don't
into
ever
your
know where
life.
the message, right? You can't really, the messenger doesn't always come in the way that you think they would, right?
Wow.
And so you had this guy, you have this monument, and then the last part was, I thought, okay, I know what I'll do. I'll go volunteer. Like a lot of people, I wrote checks. But I thought I'll go volunteer. So Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I called the local food bank in Manhattan. There are two of them. I don't remember which one it was. And I said, hey, I want to come volunteer with you guys. And the dude on the other end of the phone says, yeah, we don't need you.
What?
Right.
What?
That was my reaction.
What? They said, we don't need
But
you.
here's the third part of the story. He goes, buddy, everybody and their brother wants to volunteer before Thanksgiving. People are hungry 365 days a year. Pick another day. Hangs up.
Oh,
This is New York. It's not altogether unusual.
gosh.
But
But what a lesson.
Yeah.
Everybody and their brother wants to volunteer, like before a holiday.
Because they want to feel good.
Right.
So about a month and a half later, 2 months later, I walked into this local organization called God's Love We Deliver, which is still there today, and they were on the Lower East Side at the time, and they provided nutritious meals to homebound AIDS patients. So I would go in there and I would start volunteering, and some days I would cut vegetables, some days I would answer the phone. So I'd leave my job at the bank I was with, I'd go over and I'd do this, and it was really interesting me to be connected to a world I had no idea about. I had no sense of what that was or what that, but I would cut vegetables next to a bunch of people that I would never have been with otherwise, and I was a part of that community. I would see names on the wall like we have here, people that donated, and I would think, oh.
I wonder who this person is. I wonder who that
why
person is.
did they do this?
Yes.
Why was that important to them? And so, number 3. So ultimately, I made some decisions coming out of all of that to say, I don't know where I want to go, but I know where I don't want to be.
Wow.
And so I did one of those, push my chips into the middle of the table and left. So when I quit the corporate world, I started volunteering in a bunch of places. One was a small startup nonprofit that was providing brand new clothing to people. There's a lot of used clothing, but if you don't know, people who are homeless don't get socks and underwear. So the gentleman that founded this charity understood, okay, let me find brand new clothing, and he found some success. The gentleman that founded the charity was a Holocaust survivor who had spent 5 years in the camps as from 13 to 18 years old, and he became a very successful businessman in Orlando, a guy named Henry Landworth. And Henry retired after building his business here and launching terrific philanthropic efforts here in Central Florida, retired to North Florida, started this little charity. Started to gain some steam. A friend of mine asked me to come in and volunteer. I came in to volunteer. I started just getting it going. Henry comes to see me one day and he wanted to know, who are you and how do you know to do all this? And I'm like, I'm just a volunteer, Henry. I'm just here to help out.
Oh my gosh, it was your work in the public sector.
Right? So Henry says, you and I, we need to talk. And Henry's a very persuasive person.
With the profits. It was your work with the profits.
So Henry said, I want you to run this. I said, Henry, I don't know anything about running a charity. He goes, you'll figure it out. You're a smart guy. I was like, Henry, I don't know. I'm just not sure. And this is what he said to me. You need to understand this. We're on opposite sides of the same prayer. I need someone to run this and you need something to do with your life. This is it.
So and that's how you got started. So truly, your work in the private sector paid off.
Right. I run a big business today, right? We run a big business. It's not any different than I'm used to. I just found a way here to use the skills, gifts, and abilities that I have with a group of incredible people to do this.
So how long after you met the guy in the subway to the point that you left?
Probably less than 6 months.
Really?
But I would say, I think for most of us, Serena, these are things that are probably weighing on your heart and mind in the back of it, and you're kind of making your way through. I wouldn't call it a rash decision. I would call it a timely decision. It coincided with some things I had going on at work that I could finish thoughtfully, and it created a good time for me to walk away.
Well, Tampa is blessed to have you. I mean, we are blessed. And a lot of times I will go to events and I'll hear about these speeches that you give, and you often open a speech with something very unusual, and that's talking about your last meal.
Yeah. So for anyone that ever comes into our world, I hope that all the folks we see behind us never lack for a meal. I hope you never lack for a meal, but the people we serve do. So what we always want to do is remind everybody why food is important to us. So if I asked you, Serena, what's the meal? If you're on death row, a little indelicate, you're on death row, what's your last meal?
But you know what? That question honestly affected my life too, because I remember John Wayne Gacy on death row, they asked him what his last meal was. I was in college in Chicago. It was fried chicken and strawberry ice cream. And Thomas, why do I still remember that?
Well,
why?
Because it's memorable. What's your last meal?
I know my last meal would be probably a piece of pizza, and because of the memories of my daughter.
Correct.
And sitting with my daughter.
Right. So all of us, food binds us, it defines us, it helps us understand who we are. The memories we have in our lives are built around it. You know, the pizza with your daughter, the first date with a boyfriend, a Thanksgiving meal with family, a recipe card that has been passed down to generations. All of us understand that whether we have a lot of food in our lives or none, the thing that does pull us together is the understanding that food is important not only to how we feel about ourselves health-wise, but it's important to us personally and culturally. And we think that's really important, and we think that's one of the things that draws all of us together.
Well, we are so excited for the next 2 segments of the show because you're going to share all the amazing things and go in depth about what's happening here at Feeding Tampa Bay, and also what's next, because there's some exciting news coming up.
Yeah. Got a lot to tell you.
A lot.